Right, so today you join us at Partridge Lakes near Warrington, and we're doing a bit of summer mudline fishing and shallow water edge fishing for F1s and the odd carp as well. Now, this is so important in the summer months. The fish want to get into shallow water because the water's warmed up and that's where they want to feed. So this can be a great tactic of catching it. See that F1 there? Just try and hold him up. Lovely little F1. Pop him back and I'll get stuck into how we go about catching these fish. So first of all, I want to speak about the areas of your peg. So I'm saying shallow water. Now, here at Partridge, we're on peg 18 today. We've got a typical mudline across on these snake lakes. So what I mean by mudline is across to the far bank, the shallowest water, there's a bare bit of bank. You can get in a nice depth from anything from say like 12 to 20 inches deep. That's what ideally I'm looking for, because you can get the fish coming in regular, they're not going to be spooky. If you fish shallower than 12 inch, sometimes the fish can be really spooky and it can make them hard to catch. Likewise, if it's too deep, the fish will come in your peg and it won't be as easy to catch if you've not got as right depth of water. So today we've got, luckily enough, we've got a nice depth. We've got about 15, 16 inch across, which is perfect ideally. It makes sure the fish can come in the far bank nice and freely, tail up, and catch them as fish easy. So the rig wise, I've just got a short kit, just because here at Partridge I've got a short free on my pole as well, just stiffens it up, makes it nice and easy. Now this is really important on these style of venues. You want a nice stiff pole, because the way you're going to be feeding is, it's not, you need to be nice and accurate but nice and fast the way you're doing it, so nice and steady away. So I've got a short kit, just a white 13 Jura, just so because we're catching some F1s, if we do catch a few bonus carp, we're going to get them in. Now rig wise, it couldn't be simpler. I've just set one rig up today. This actually does my across and my edge, so I can pick and choose between the two. I've just got 017 main line. I've got three number 9 back shots there, just in the middle of the rig at the minute. If I need them closer I can, but we've got a slight breeze coming down today, so just so it doesn't interfere with my float, just got them where I need to be in the middle of my lash. Now float wise is really important. For this sort of fishing you're going to need a heavy style float, so I've opted to use a carp shallow and a 4x14. This just allows me, I've got enough shot down my line so when the fish comes in it's not going to get wafted around too much, and it's not too heavy where the fish are going to realise and not pick up your bait easily. So a nice 4x14 carp shallow. Now shotting pattern couldn't be simpler, just a little bulk, 5 number 8s above my hook length, which is a 3-inch hook length, GPM 013, just a pre-tied cut down. So a really simple rig but devastating and effective. Now one thing that's really important is your pots for this sort of fishing. The last thing you want is to get over to your mark, put your bait in the water, and your pots take a while to drop your bait out. Now what I've done is I've just cut a few extra holes in this pot, just chopped it down. It looks like I've just hacked at it, but there's a few reasons why. On the bottom I've just made them bigger, and on the side, so it just allows the water to get in my pot and push that bait out really quickly. You see how quickly I can eject the bait from the pot, and this is really important. So I've just got a few different sizes, got a large pot, a cut down large, so I've just cut the rim off it, and then I've got a medium, but I don't expect to be using this today. I'll be using a cut down large or a large, or even using a big pot. I'll just get it for you now. Big cupping pot, I can measure out 100ml, 200ml, I can go through that, and I'll go through more when we're fishing with that. Now, just put this rig down. Bait wise, it's been really simple today. Here at Partridge and across the venues of the country, maggots are brilliant hook baits. That's all I've bought. Now if you were fishing for a few bigger carp as well, you could bring some worms or a bit of meat, but 2 or 3 maggots or 4 maggots, 2 to 4 maggots on a size 16 or 14 if you're catching a few more carp, is dead simple. Now bait wise, I've just got some Fin Perfect 2mm pellets, and I've got some Match Method Mix Original. Now this Match Method Mix Original, for all my F1 fishing, carp fishing, I'll use it the most. It's just nice and versatile, it's heavy enough, which is one thing that's really important. It's got a load of pellets in it and the fish love eating it, so it's really important. So how I go about mixing this is really important as well. When I'm mixing, I want to get as much water as I can into the mix at the start of the mix. So I like to do it a little bit more than your traditional sort of way. Traditional sort of way is like half the amount of water to your ground bait, but I like to do it like 3/4 the amount. So today I've mixed up 3 pints of dry ground bait and I've put in the mix 2 pints of water. Now at first when you do it, you think you've wrecked your ground bait, you think, oh that's too much, he's never going to come back round. But ideally do it in the morning before your match or the night before, so the ground bait gets enough water in it so it's nice and heavy and nice and fluffy. So this is the reason why, because I'm fishing in shallow water, I want to get my bait down to the bottom, I want to get it pinned on the bottom. The last thing I want to do is make it nice and dry, so when the fish come in it starts wafting around everywhere. It's going to cause your line, it's going to make a fish harder to catch. As where if you get more water into it, it's going to make a lot easier to catch the fish pinned down to the bottom. Now I'm personally, I think I'm not a big believer in flavourings unless you're fishing for really, really big carp and it's a venue where lots of goes in. But one thing that's really going to change your ground bait mix is the bait booster. Now, the reason why I use this is it's nice and sticky, but adds a little bit of weight to my ground bait without messing it up. Now, what I mean by this is I'm not adding water to the mix, so it's not going to make it really, really stodgy. But if I add a bit of this into the mix, I can make it that slightly bit heavier, and that's what I want to the bottom. So if you feel like your ground bait's not heavy enough, or you've got a little bit deeper peg, and a little bit of this to your mix, I'll show you when I do it in a minute, can make that ground bait just melt out the pot, straight to the bottom where it is, the fish come in eating it, and you get a nice clean biting indication. So I like using stuff that gives me an advantage of how it goes in the peg. So I'm not just lobbing it in my water and just hoping for the best when I'm doing it, I'm using it for a reason. Now the smell and the scent isn't going to make any difference to what I think is going to happen. It's probably going to help me in a little bit of a way. It's not going to hinder me catching, but what I'm trying to look for is the consistency in my ground bait. I want it a little bit heavier, and this allows me to be able to do it. So how I go about doing it is I have a little pot. So I've got my 2 mils with ground bait. I've just got my bucket there in case I need to top it up, and then I have like a little mixing pot. So what I like to do with this is measure out what I'm putting in. So for example, I've just put 200 mils of ground bait to 100 mil of pellets at the minute. Now, if I feel like the fish are getting preoccupied and they're staying in the peg a little bit longer, I can cut out the 2 mils, put a little bit more ground bait in, and just vice versa. If I feel like I need to put a bit more particles in, there's a few carp grubbing around, I can do so. So this is why I like to have a tub, just a versatile, because the last thing I want to do is get all my ground bait and lob all my pellets in and it just be messed up for the day. This way I can just mix and choose between the two, what I'm going for the ratios, and also it allows me to say if I feel like, if you've got a shallower edge and a cross, if you feel like you don't need to put this in, you can put it further in. But like what I like to do, say I've got 2 in there, so I'll just add another 100 mil of ground bait, or 200 mil I'll put in actually. I'm not going to put any more pellets in because there's a few in there. Now this here now is probably like the ideal mix. It's nice and fluffy. Believe it or not, that's the actual mix I've just said. It's not overly wet. Don't get me wrong, when I squeeze it into a ball, it does get squeezed to a ball, but it's got the amount I need to be in it. But literally all I'll do is just put a tiny bit in for now. Oh, drop the lid. Tiny bit in for now, and I'll just whiz it round in my hand. So that's the consistency before, and then all of a sudden you can feel it gets a lot heavier. Obviously it smells lovely, that washed out one, that's the favourite one I like to use. But all of a sudden, it's not changed my mix, but that feels a lot heavier. So when it goes in, I'll just put a little bit more in, so you can see the amount. Don't need loads, probably last you, probably easy up to 10 sessions with that. But you see there now, I'm mixing it round. And the beauty of it is, it's got changed to a nice consistency. It's still going to melt out my pot, but I've got a lot of heaviness into that now. It might sound silly, but it's going to melt on my pot and get straight to the bottom. It's not all clumping together. I can push that through. It's all just nice particles in there. Now, the thing of beauty of that is, if you feel like you need to dry out your mix and just add a few more bits of ground bait, this is why I like to do it. The last thing I want to do is say put 1/10 of a bottle into my ground bait, mix it all around, chuck all my micros in, and that's going to go out for the day. You know, with fishing, things can change, conditions, how the fish are feeding, and that's what I like to do. That's ideal now. Got a nice heavy ground bait. Like I say, I can just literally drop in my bucket, fill my bucket, tub back up, and we're ready to go. Once I've started to catch a few fish, I can make a few mixes up. Now, if you feel like you're onto the mix you want to do, you can make a massive amount of it if you want, but I like to just keep going as I go. I can see how much I'm feeding, nice and regular, and go about catching them. So first of all, you think, how do you often go out feeding your peg? Now, ideally, I like to put, say, like 100 ml of bait in if I want to start, just so I can get some fish coming in and out. If you were doing something else, say starting down the edge or starting down the middle, that's what I'd look to do. But if I was looking to just start on the mud line, which can be a great way of doing it, that's what I'm going to be looking into. I'm going to be just shipping in and out with a large pot on and trying to catch some fish. So that's my little setup, that's my bait, where we're fishing, over to the far bank, and we've got an edge line as well if we need it. But a few important aspects, that ground bait is nice and heavy now. Now, one thing I will mention is when I fill my pot up, there's a little way I like to do it. I don't like to push it in really hard, because like I said before, I'm trying to get these holes to just push my ground bait and melt it out really quick. You'll see when I'm fishing how quick I can release my bait, which is really important. So what I want to do is literally put your pot over your tub, literally just dump it all in, so it makes it like a little dome on top. Now all I do is just push that dome level with the pot. So when I fish and feed that, and literally slid down, I'm going to be able to just put that on the water. The pot, see how that's melted out the pot without even in the water. So that's going to just go onto the bottom where I'm fishing, put my bait straight over the top of it, and dead easy. So you can see how I've just literally turned that over without any water pressure. It's fell out of my pot. So one thing to be careful is when you do ship out, be nice and steady. Don't, just make sure your spin doesn't round, just nice and steady. One thing that's really important is getting your bait into the swim, because that's when you'll be catching the fish. So enough waffling. I'm going to try and catch some fish across now. So what I like to do is just, for a little starter, just to see, I'm going to put 3 maggots on. Now it's quite a big hook bait, you think, for an F1, or it's perfect for a carp, but a big up for it from an F1. But because you've got a bit of cloud there, I think it gives the fish a little bit of confidence, and it's straight on your bait and catching them. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, little dome, just push that in ever so slightly and be nice and steady when I ship out. So just put your pole together. Now one thing that's really important with this shallow water fishing across is to get yourself set up before you go into your little hole. Because now, last thing you want to do is try and get your rig set and messing around with your hole, because the fish can be quite quick when they come into this. So what I like to do is have my arm on my dolly butt at the back here, and literally I just push the pole forward. Yeah, I'm nice and steady now. Get to my mark there, just push my little pole forward, 1, 2, 3, no problems there. My ground bait, lift it up, drop it in, and I'm fishing straight away. So what I hopefully now, I feel the fish will just creep from this reed line up onto that shelf where I'm fishing and intercept my bait. Now one thing is to see with that short kit and that short free, how stiff my pole is now. The indication there. How stiff my pole is now. I just want to keep everything so still. I don't want to move. I don't want to move off that little pile I've put in. You see how quick that's probably like 30-40 seconds and I'm into a fish straight away. I think it's a little stocky carp, stocky F1. But you see, I've got a little stocky F1. It's took 3 maggots, so it's not gonna, don't let your hook bait hinder it. But the best thing about ground bait is a brilliant attractor. It's probably the best attractor for catching fish. Ooh, little stocky. Try and hold him up. Lovely little fish, probably like 10 or 12 ounce. So it's not all about big carp and big F1s. You can catch loads of different fish on there as well, different sizes. But like I was saying, we'll put 3 maggots on. Just so I just need a lot of hook point showing. That's how I hook my maggots. I'm not bothered if some of the bigger end or the thinner end. I just want a lot of hook point showing. Make sure. Ooh, lost the shot. I want to make sure I've got a load of hook points showing. I mean, nice and simple. So I've got a nice bait there. It just smells lovely, that. She washed out one, to be fair. Like ground bait, large pot, just shove them in. It's just nice and secure. Just ship out to my mark. So Like, I'm ready to go in the mud now, so just slide that up, get in position, drop my pole in, 1, 2, 3, lift it up, 1, 2, 3. So we're fishing straight away in the mud. The bite straight away. So see how, like, there, you've got to be really, really quick with getting your bait in. So see how that's just emphasised why I need to use a bit of bait booster. The bait sinks nice and quick. Why I've got my pots the way I have, and why I've got the rig I've got on as well. So everything I'm using is going to help me. I'll hold him up actually. Help me catch these fish. So some dead simple tactics. Ooh, can't get hold of him. Some dead simple tactics there. Just dead simple. A few maggots on the hook. Playing around with your mix of your ground bait if you want a bit heavier. But you see how quick, how deadly and effective. Just dropping a little bit of bait boost, making that tiny bit heavier. A few micro pellets, bag of ground bait, and you're away catching a few of these lovely things.